The sky over Earth was darkening, not from the coming of night, but from the massive alien fleet that blotted out the sun. It had begun as a whisper, strange signals from the edge of the galaxy, incomprehensible flashes of light. By the time humanity recognized the threat, it was too late. They came in waves, ships the size of cities, with weapons that turned entire cities to ash in moments. Their arrival was the final, brutal end of what had once been a thriving planet. A war began that no one could have anticipated. The invaders, an alien race known as the Ka, had been watching humanity for centuries. They were efficient, relentless, and brutal in ways humans could never have imagined. But humanity, in its desperation, discovered something the Ka didn't account for: resistance. While Earth burned and the majority of the human race crumbled under the weight of the invasion, a small group of survivors refused to give in. The resistance was a ragtag group: soldiers, scientists, and civilians who had found strength in each other. It started in bunkers, in hidden labs, in the forgotten corners of cities. A network of surviving fighters, engineers, and scholars who began working together against the invaders. They had lost everything: family, homes, entire countries, but they still had their will to fight. Ilara was among them. A highly skilled engineer, she had once worked on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence and spacecraft design before the invasion began. But now, she was part of the last line of defense. Her team of scientists and engineers had developed a plan: a ship capable of slipping behind enemy lines, capable of gathering critical intelligence, capable of taking the fight to the Ka themselves. The plan, however, was not without risk. It would be a one-way mission. No one had ever planned on coming back. They didn't even know if it would work. Ilara stood alongside Commander Alex, the leader of the Resistance's most elite unit, and Sergeant Darius, a hardened soldier who had lost his entire family in the first wave of the invasion. They were preparing for the mission's final phase, the launch of the ship. This ship was humanity's last hope. It had been months in the making, and no one believed it would ever actually launch. Yet here it was, poised for the impossible. But when the ship's engines roared to life, something went horribly wrong. The launch was meant to be the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's fight, but it quickly spiraled into chaos. The ship's systems faltered, their trajectory off course, and as the car advanced, the escape route was compromised. In those moments, Ilara lost consciousness. When Ilara woke, she wasn't on Earth. The ground beneath her wasn't the familiar soil of her home planet. It was smooth, metallic, cold, and alien material. She slowly sat up, her head throbbing, disoriented. The last memory she had was the launch of the ship, but where was she now? The walls around her were adorned with strange symbols, pulsing lights in unnatural rhythms. She tried to move, but a sense of vertigo swept over her, forcing her back down. Her breathing was shallow, as if something about this place was draining her strength. She stood, shakily, and surveyed her surroundings. The ship, if it could even be called that, was vast, an endless labyrinth of corridors and chambers, each one more alien than the last. Ilara had seen alien tech before, but nothing like this. The walls seemed to bend and shift in ways that defied physics. It was clear, this was no ordinary spacecraft. It was a ship designed by a civilization far older, far more advanced than the Ka. And yet, there was no sign of life. Ilara stumbled through the halls, her mind racing. Was this ship abandoned? Had it been derelict for centuries, or had it been left intentionally? But why was she here? How had she survived the crash? There was no time to focus on the answers, not yet. She had to get out. She had to find a way to make sense of what had happened. But something told her this place wasn't just abandoned. Something was waiting for her. Meanwhile, far from the ship, the Ka forces were continuing their relentless assault on the remnants of humanity. In what remained of Earth's major cities, pockets of resistance were fighting back, but each victory came at a high price. Commander Alex, Darius, and the others had been fighting in the shadows, attempting to gather their forces for a final stand. But with the loss of the ship, their plans were thrown into disarray. "We can't win this fight alone," Alex had said, standing in the ruined city of New York, staring at the alien ships hovering overhead. "We need a miracle." That miracle, it seemed, had just arrived, but in a form no one could have predicted. The car was starting to notice something strange. Something had happened to the ship. It hadn't just disappeared, it had moved in a way that defied everything the car knew about human technology. Something far beyond human engineering was now involved. But the car were no strangers to surprises. They were ruthless, and they had their own methods for dealing with anything that threatened their dominance. And now, Ilara's survival, her very presence aboard this unknown ship, was the new mystery that would bring the car back to Earth. As Ilara navigated the ship, she discovered remnants of a civilization long forgotten. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that this was no ordinary craft. It was a living ship, one that seemed to pulse with energy as though it had its own consciousness. She found rooms filled with data terminals, some still functioning, some so damaged they seemed to be centuries old. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together the puzzle of the ship. Who had built it? Why had it been left in such a state of decay? The deeper she went into the heart of the ship, the more ominous the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to close in on her, the light dimming until she was left in near darkness, save for the faint glow of strange symbols etched into the walls. And then she found it. A chamber deep within the ship, unlike anything she had seen before. Inside, suspended in the center, was a figure, a being, humanoid in shape but unlike anything she had ever seen. Its body was covered in a strange, liquid substance, its eyes glowing faintly with an eerie light. It was as if the being was in a state of hibernation, waiting for something or someone. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. She had found something ancient. Something powerful. But before she could process the implications, the ship's systems began to pulse with an aggressive energy. The walls shook as though the ship was coming to life, and a voice deep, resonating, echoed in her mind. "She is not supposed to be here." The voice was alien, a sound that transcended language. It wasn't speaking to her in the conventional sense, it was speaking inside her mind, in a way that defied explanation. And then, before she could react, the entire ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered and went out completely. Ilara was plunged into darkness. Back on Earth, the car forces were beginning to close in. The human resistance was getting desperate. They knew the tides were turning. The car had been relentless, and they were not about to stop until every last human was wiped out. But there was something else happening, a ripple in the fabric of space itself. The ship that had disappeared from the radar had reappeared, but it wasn't alone. Another, much larger vessel had joined it, its dark silhouette looming over the ruins of Earth. The resistance could only watch as the car's attention shifted. A new player had entered the game. And it was clear that whatever force was controlling this alien ship was not just another invader, it was something much more ancient, much more dangerous. The mystery was only beginning. As Ilara struggled to survive aboard the alien vessel, fighting against a force she couldn't even begin to understand, the stakes were raised higher than ever. Humanity had thought it was fighting for survival. But now, it was fighting for something much bigger. And as the tide of war seemed to turn in their favor, a deeper, more sinister threat was waiting, just out of sight. Power remains a mystery. Keep the focus on action and suspense. The world, once teeming with life, was now a shell of what it had been. The skies above were a battlefield, streaked with fire and ash as alien ships hovered ominously. On the ground, humanity's last hope was the resistance, a coalition of soldiers, engineers, scientists, and civilians who had banded together, unwilling to give up, even as the car began to erase their cities from the map. But for every victory, the cost was greater than the last, and the line between survival and annihilation grew thinner. Commander Alex had been through hell. A decorated officer before the invasion, he was now leading what remained of Earth's armed forces, a ragtag team of soldiers, engineers, and civilians, all survivors of the car onslaught. He was no longer just a leader, he was a symbol of hope. But with every passing day, that hope was fraying at the edges. His face was weathered, scarred by both the alien war and the burden of responsibility. His brown hair, once neatly trimmed, was now unkempt, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights spent planning, strategizing, and coordinating with what little forces were left. Alex had seen it all: the first wave of the car's overwhelming assault, the desperation of humanity's last stand, and the slow, painful realization that victory was slipping further from their grasp. Still, he held on to one principle: no surrender. No matter how many lives were lost, no matter how outmatched they were. His team, known as the Vanguard, was an elite unit composed of the best soldiers humanity had to offer. Among them was Darius, his second in command, a man with a reputation for ruthlessness and efficiency. Darius had lost everything in the invasion. The death of his family still haunted him, though he hid his pain beneath a cold exterior. "We can't hold this position much longer, Commander," Darius had said, his voice grim as they huddled in the war room. "The Car have reinforcements on the way, and we don't have the firepower to keep up." Alex clenched his jaw, his fingers brushing the map of Earth's remaining territories. They were running out of places to retreat to, and the Car's forces had nearly encircled the last human strongholds. But there was something more: the strange anomaly with the ship that had disappeared after Ilara's last transmission. It had reappeared, but with it, an overwhelming sense of foreboding. Whatever had happened to Ilara, whatever she had found, was the key to their survival or their ultimate destruction. "We hold. No retreat," Alex said firmly, his eyes hardening. "The Car may think they have us cornered, but they don't know what we're capable of." Darius was the kind of soldier who didn't talk much. His actions spoke louder than words, and they always had. A towering figure, his every move radiated the strength of someone who had seen far too much death, far too much destruction, and had come to the only conclusion: he could fight or die. The invasion had torn his life apart. He had once been a family man, a loving father and husband, but that life was gone now, reduced to ash when the Car obliterated his city. His wife and daughter had been the first casualties in the Car's invasion of the eastern United States. That loss had made him a weapon, a man with nothing to lose. Yet despite the rage that churned within him, Darius never let his emotions cloud his judgment in battle. He fought for those who still lived, for those who had yet to be consumed by the alien machine of war. The war was a constant battle of attrition. Fighting the Car on their terms, with their advanced technology, was no easy feat. But humanity had adapted in ways the invaders had not expected. They had learned to hack into alien systems, reverse engineering their weapons and vehicles. What the Resistance lacked in numbers, they made up for with ingenuity. The Resistance's main stronghold was in what remained of New York City, a city that had once been the heartbeat of the world. Now, it was a smoldering ruin, its skyline a jagged silhouette against the fiery sky. The Car had been relentless, assaulting the city with wave after wave of ships and ground forces. Yet New York still stood, protected by humanity's determination and resourcefulness. Alex's Vanguard had been tasked with a critical mission: infiltrate a Car command center located deep within the city and disable the alien communications array that was coordinating the Car's attack. The success of this mission could buy humanity precious time. Darius, Alex, and a handful of soldiers moved through the war-torn streets, their armor caked with dirt and blood. The air was thick with the acrid stench of smoke, the ruins of buildings strewn across the landscape like fallen giants. Above them, Car ships hovered, scanning for any signs of human movement. The soldiers moved silently, relying on their advanced cloaking tech and the element of surprise. They reached the command center after hours of moving through the city's labyrinthine ruins. The building was heavily fortified, but the Resistance had learned how to use alien tech against them. Darius planted explosives on the outer walls, while Alex set up the signal jammer. As the countdown began, the soldiers took their positions, weapons ready. The Car didn't know what hit them. As the building shook with the force of the blast, the Resistance stormed in, cutting down Car soldiers with precision. The battle was over quickly, but it had cost them one soldier. Corporal Miles had been hit in the crossfire. Darius, ever the professional, didn't waste time mourning the loss. He ordered the team to move forward, their mission far from over. "We've got the communications array," Alex said, breathless from the fight. "But the Car won't take this lightly." Expect reinforcements. As the team extracted themselves from the battlefield, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From a nearby rooftop, Darius spotted something far worse than reinforcements. A massive car battleship had descended from the clouds, its enormous hull blocking out the stars. It was unlike any ship the Resistance had encountered before. Its design was sleek, alien, and terrifying. The air crackled with an unnatural energy as the ship loomed overhead. "This is bad," Darius muttered, his grip tightening on his weapon. Meanwhile, aboard the mysterious alien ship, Ilara had made a shocking discovery. The ship was alive. Its corridors seemed to breathe, its walls alive with energy. The ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a sentient being, and it had a mind of its own. Ilara's presence had disturbed it, and now she was fighting for control of the very ship that had once seemed abandoned. The alien systems were complex, and though she had years of experience in engineering, this was unlike anything she had ever seen. As she ventured deeper into the ship, she encountered strange devices, machines that hummed with power, their functions beyond her understanding. Her mind was racing as she connected the pieces. This ship had once been part of a much larger fleet, a fleet that had vanished centuries ago. It was built by an ancient race, a race that had long since disappeared. But their technology lived on, embedded within the ship's systems. The car, Ilara realized, had not created this vessel. They had found it. And now, she was trapped inside it. As she moved further through the corridors, she stumbled upon something even more disturbing, a chamber filled with alien pods. Each pod contained a figure, humanoid in shape, but not human. Their bodies were suspended in a strange, viscous fluid. They were alive, but in a state of suspended animation. Ilara's breath caught in her throat as she realized the truth. These were the creators of the ship. These beings were the key to the car's power. But what were they doing here? Why had they been left in such a state? Before she could investigate further, the ship's systems pulsed, and a voice spoke again in her mind. "She has unlocked the door. Prepare for awakening." A cold shiver ran down Ilara's spine. Something was about to happen. Something that would change everything. Back on Earth, the Resistance was on the brink of collapse. The car battleship that had descended upon New York City was unlike anything they had faced before. The city's defenses, strained as they were, had no chance against the firepower of this new enemy. Alex and Darius knew they had little time to regroup. "Call for reinforcements," Alex ordered, his mind racing. "Get us out of here. We need a new plan." But even as they retreated into the shadows of the city, they couldn't shake the feeling that the war was about to change. The car had something else up their sleeve, something darker, more powerful than anything they had shown so far. And Ilara, alone aboard the alien ship, was the key. The stakes had never been higher. The Resistance was outgunned, outnumbered, and running out of time. But in the depths of the alien ship, something was stirring. And as the war for humanity's survival raged on, an unexpected twist was about to unfold, one that would change everything. The war against the car had reached a tipping point. Earth's remaining strongholds were crumbling under the weight of the alien invasion, and the Resistance was running low on resources, manpower, and morale. Every battle seemed to come with an ever-increasing price. But as the car's forces advanced, humanity's resolve hardened. The survivors, from the soldiers to the scientists, were determined to turn the tide no matter the cost. Alex stood at the front of the crumbling fortifications, watching the distant flashes of explosions in the dark sky. The once glorious city of New York was a battlefield, its skyline forever altered by the brutal campaign. The car had deployed their most advanced forces in the region, and their brutal assault had left the Resistance reeling. For days, the vanguard had been pushing back the car, but it was clear that the enemy was adapting faster than the Resistance could. Their weapons, once strange and incomprehensible, were now being countered with human ingenuity. Reverse-engineered car tech, combined with the skills of humanity's most brilliant minds, had allowed the Resistance to stand firm. But it wasn't enough. The car had not only superior technology, they had numbers. And soon, that would be the deciding factor. Commander Alex had always been a rock. His strength in the face of adversity had inspired countless soldiers under his command. But even he was beginning to feel the weight of the war. The guilt was eating him alive. Every time he looked at the faces of his soldiers, there was the unspoken question, how many more will we lose today? His mind flashed back to Darius's expression when they had found Miles's body, no tears, just a hard resolve to keep moving forward. But even Darius, whose grim determination had seen him through the worst of the war, had his doubts. That loss of his family had made him a weapon, but it had also stripped him of something else, the ability to feel anything beyond anger. The people who had once meant everything to him were gone, and his only purpose now was to fight and kill. He was living on borrowed time. One of their recent successes, the destruction of a car communications relay, had bought the resistance some breathing room, but Alex knew that the car's retaliation would be swift. The car had underestimated humanity's resilience, but that was about to change. They would not expect what was coming. The turning point had come when Ilara's transmission reached them, distorted and faint, but undeniable. She had survived. Somehow, she had found herself aboard an alien ship of unimaginable size. The last words she had spoken before the transmission cut out had sent a chill down Alex's spine. They are not what they seem. There is something deeper at play here. The mysteries of that ship haunted him as he prepared for the next phase of their mission. Ilara had always been one of their brightest minds. If she had uncovered something new, something that could shift the balance of power, then it was their duty to find her. The stakes had escalated beyond simple survival. Now, they were fighting for something far more significant than Earth's defense. Back in the Resistance's headquarters, Darius sat at a table, running simulations on a hastily assembled alien device. Despite his brutal exterior, Darius had always been the team's technical expert. He could read the alien schematics like a second language. But as he worked through the alien code, his frustration grew. The technology was as advanced as anything they had ever seen, and yet, there was something wrong about it. It felt wrong. The signals were being sent out on frequencies too high to detect with human technology. And the ships they were dealing with weren't just war vessels, they were part of a much larger machine. The alien network extended far beyond Earth. The car had not come to conquer a single planet, they had come to take something far more dangerous. As Darius dug deeper, he found something that made his blood run cold, a hidden transmission buried within the car's tech. It was a map, not of Earth, but of several solar systems, and one of them was disturbingly close to human colonies that had long been abandoned. The map had a warning: return what you have taken, or the cycle will be complete. At that moment, the weight of the war hit him like a tidal wave. The car were not just invaders. They were scavengers. And what they had taken, what they were after, was something far older, far more powerful than anything humanity could imagine. Darius clenched his fists, his thoughts racing. The Resistance had been fighting a losing battle, thinking they were defending Earth. But this war was bigger than that. He reached for his comms device and contacted Alex. "I found something. Something. Wrong. This isn't about Earth. It's about something much larger." Alex's voice crackled through. "What do you mean?" "The car are scavengers. They're after something. But it's not just technology, it's something on Earth. Something ancient." "What?" Alex demanded, his tone sharp. "Are you saying they've been here before?" "I don't know," Darius admitted. "But I think this war is just a distraction. We've been fighting for survival while they've been after something far more important. They're not here for Earth. They're here for something else." Alex was silent for a moment, the enormity of Darius's words sinking in. "I'll be there soon. Keep digging." As Darius disconnected, he felt a growing sense of dread. They had been operating under the assumption that the car's assault was about Earth's resources, its people, its wealth, its technology. But now, Darius realized, it was far more insidious. The car weren't interested in a mere conquest. They were after something buried deep in the planet's history. Something that had been hidden for millennia. The Resistance had no idea what they were truly up against. Alex looked over the team's blueprints of the car mothership, the map they had managed to acquire through a daring raid on one of their supply depots. The enemy was vast and unknowable, and the ship was a labyrinth of corridors and alien architecture that could trap them at every turn. Yet, this was the only chance left. The Resistance's final stand had begun. Every soldier was on edge, knowing they were walking into a suicide mission. Even now, as they gathered for the briefing, the weight of the task ahead hung in the air like a thick fog. The assault would begin at dawn. The plan was simple: divide and conquer. A small strike team would infiltrate the mothership while the rest of the Resistance distracted the car forces with a full-scale frontal assault. The hope was that the car would be too focused on the attack on the surface to notice the infiltration team making their way into the mothership's core. The Resistance had no illusions of success, but it was the only hope they had left. Ilara's final message had provided them with one key piece of information: the ship's core was not merely a power source, it was the heart of the ancient beings. If it could be destroyed, it would cripple the car, severing their connection to the ancient entities they sought to awaken. But getting to the core would require navigating through the heart of the enemy's most heavily fortified ship. The plan had a major flaw, of course. The car had known about the Resistance's activities for weeks, and any misstep would lead to instant death. No one expected to make it out alive. The night before the mission, the air was thick with tension. The soldiers were restless, each of them lost in their own thoughts, reflecting on the battle that was about to come. For many of them, this was the end. They knew it. Some had families they'd never see again. Others had nothing left but the hope that their sacrifice would give humanity a fighting chance. But even as their hearts beat in sync with the pulse of impending battle, there was a pervasive feeling of uncertainty. The car had been relentless, and no one knew if this mission could possibly succeed. Darius stood in the corner of the room, staring at the schematics of the mothership, his mind racing through the calculations. He could feel the familiar weight of the rifle in his hands, the comfort of a weapon he had used 1,000 times. But this wasn't like the other battles. This wasn't a fight for survival, it was a desperate attempt to take down a force that was much bigger than they were. Ilara's warning echoed in his mind. The car are after something deeper. They're not just invaders. They're searching for a power that has been hidden from them for centuries. He didn't know what that power was, but if they were to succeed in destroying the mothership, it had to be stopped before it could be unleashed. The night passed quickly, and the dawn of humanity's final stand broke with the sound of artillery fire and explosions echoing across the battlefield. The Resistance's ground forces surged forward, drawing the car's attention and giving the infiltration team a chance to board the mothership. But it wasn't without casualties. The car had anticipated the attack, and their response was swift and brutal. With every step forward, the Resistance was forced to make painful sacrifices, each moment feeling like an eternity as they fought for their survival. The strike team, led by Alex and Darius, managed to slip past the car defenses, their cloaking technology providing them with the cover they needed. They breached the outer hull of the mothership, their footsteps echoing in the vast, sterile halls of the alien craft. The sound of the battle raged outside, but inside, there was an eerie silence, a silence that gnawed at their nerves. They moved quickly, their mission clear: find the core, plant the charges, and escape. But the deeper they ventured into the mothership, the more they realized something was wrong. The ship felt alive. Its corridors pulsed with a strange energy, as though the ship itself was watching them. The walls seemed to shift, the lights flickering with a malevolent glow. Alex's heart raced as he ordered the team forward. Keep moving. We don't have much time. They reached the core chamber, but what they found there was beyond their worst fears. The core was a swirling mass of dark energy, suspended in a field of distorted space. But it wasn't the energy that stopped them, it was the creature. It was a shadow of the ancient beings Ilara had mentioned, a twisted, monstrous form that seemed to be half alive, half machine, its tendrils extending from the heart of the core, connected to the ship itself. It turned its gaze on them, and in that instant, they knew they were too late. The creature spoke, its voice a guttural rasp, "You have awakened what you should have never disturbed." The team froze, their weapons raised, but they knew it was futile. They were in the presence of something far beyond their understanding, something they had no hope of defeating. The battle was reaching its peak. The resistance outside fought with all they had left, knowing that their sacrifice might be the last chance for humanity. But inside the mothership, Alex and Darius faced an enemy that was no longer just a physical force. This was something far darker, something that had been waiting for this moment for millennia. The resistance team stood frozen in the face of the monstrous figure, its presence overwhelming. The creature's tendrils, like living wires, pulsed with dark energy, sending waves of terror through every soldier. They had been prepared for many things: alien weapons, overwhelming numbers, even the horrors of war, but nothing had prepared them for this. Alex's mind raced as the creature's cold, ancient eyes locked onto his. The words it had spoken echoed in his head, "You have awakened what you should have never disturbed." The mission had taken them here, to the heart of the car's power, but now, it was clear they had unwittingly activated something far more dangerous than the enemy they had been fighting. This wasn't just about defeating an invader, it was about confronting an evil that had been hidden from the galaxy for millennia. The creature shifted, its mass expanding and contracting with a sickening rhythm, as if it were breathing through the very walls of the ship. It reached out with one long, spindly arm, its fingers cracking and creaking like ancient bones. "We are not the invaders," the creature said, its voice scraping against Alex's mind. "We were the ones who fled. You are the trespassers." Alex swallowed hard. His heart pounded in his chest. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to steady his breath. "You have triggered the return of what was sealed away," the creature rasped, its tendrils now lifting off the floor as though they were part of the ship itself. "You think the car are your enemies? They are only servants. You are not fighting for survival. You are fighting for control of the universe itself." The words hit like a blow to the gut. The very foundation of the war they had been fighting, the entire reason humanity had risen up, was suddenly in question. The car had been nothing more than pawns. They had been fighting not to survive, but to protect themselves from a far greater threat, a threat so powerful it had once enslaved the car species itself. The resistance hadn't been waging a war to stop the car, they had been trying to stop the resurrection of a power so ancient and unfathomable that it could destroy everything. Alex could feel the weight of those words sinking in. He wasn't sure whether to scream or to run, but neither seemed like an option. The Resistance's entire strategy, everything they had fought for, was based on a lie. The enemy was not simply the car. The true enemy was a force far darker, one that had once dominated the galaxy and had been sealed away for reasons unknown. Before he could fully process the gravity of the situation, the ship around them began to tremble. The walls seemed to warp and shudder as if something deep inside the mothership had awakened. The air grew thick, electric, as the creature's voice rang out again, more urgent this time. "It is too late now. The awakening cannot be undone." And then, with a sound that reverberated through the very bones of the ship, something stirred in the depths of the mothership. A presence so vast and terrible that the ship itself seemed to react to it. The creature, too, appeared to be in fear, its form shrinking back from the source of the new disturbance. Alex's eyes went wide. The energy in the room had shifted. The entire ship was alive in a way they hadn't noticed before. The lights flickered, and the walls pulsed with an ominous rhythm, as though the very air was growing thick with dark energy. The creature's voice trembled as it looked toward something beyond the team's vision. "He has returned," it whispered, and with that, the ship's inner sanctum seemed to explode in a burst of chaotic energy. The floor beneath them cracked and split, sending the team scrambling for stability as the walls bent outward. The ship was buckling under the strain of the unseen force that was emerging from within. The resistance had no time to react as a blinding flash of light tore through the room, throwing them to the ground. When the light faded, a new figure stood at the center of the room. A being far beyond the creature, its presence radiating power unlike anything Alex had ever experienced. It was not humanoid. It was a swirling mass of light and shadow, a form constantly shifting, neither fully visible nor entirely absent. Its eyes, if they could be called that, burned with an intensity that seemed to pierce straight through their minds. The air around the being warped, and Alex could feel his body pulling toward it, as if some invisible force was compelling him to move closer, to kneel before it. His breath hitched in his throat. This was the true power the car had feared, the one they had been trying to resurrect. This was the true master. The creature that had once warned them seemed to shrink away from the being, bowing in a way that spoke volumes of its inferiority. "The Sovereign returns," it hissed, "the cycle is upon us once more." The Sovereign, the name seemed to echo through the very structure of the mothership, reverberating in their minds like a thunderclap. "You." The Sovereign's voice rang out, deep and hollow, resonating within Alex's chest, "are the final pieces of the puzzle. Your destruction will be the beginning of a new age. The car were nothing. You are but a tool to awaken what should never have been forgotten." Alex's heart slammed in his chest as he realized the truth: humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of the universe itself. The car were merely the heralds, the ones who had begun the awakening of an ancient force, but humanity had unknowingly been the last obstacle in a plan that spanned eons. The Sovereign's form began to flicker, and it extended its tendrils toward them, filling the air with a terrible power. "You, humans, will either be consumed by the awakening, or you will be the catalyst. The choice is yours." Panic began to set in. They had no idea what the choice would entail, no idea what consequences their actions would have. This was beyond anything they had ever anticipated. Alex glanced at his team, each face reflecting the same mixture of fear, confusion, and desperation. The Sovereign's eyes shifted toward them. A choice was coming. A decision. One that would determine the fate of not just Earth, but every life in the galaxy. And whatever that decision was, it was clear now that it would require a sacrifice beyond anything they could have imagined. Alex's mind raced. What were they supposed to do now? Was there even a way to defeat this thing? Could they escape? Or had they simply stumbled into a situation where humanity's fate was already sealed? The Sovereign's laugh echoed around them, as chilling as it was mocking. "No one escapes this fate." And with that, the room plunged into darkness. Outside, the last remnants of the resistance continued their assault. But they had no idea what was unfolding inside the mothership. They could only fight, unaware that the true enemy had been unleashed, and humanity's future now rested on the choices of a handful of soldiers, trapped in the heart of the car's empire, with no way out. The darkness inside the mothership was suffocating. Alex's breath echoed in the silence, every sound amplified in the oppressive void. The Sovereign's presence still loomed large, its power overwhelming. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the ship itself seemed to hum with an eerie energy, like a living entity that was watching them, waiting for them to make their move. Alex's mind raced. They had to act, they had no choice. The Sovereign had revealed its true power, a force so ancient that it defied comprehension. The car had been nothing more than pawns in a much larger game. And now, with the Sovereign's return, humanity was facing a threat far worse than any invader. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of existence itself. But even in the face of this unimaginable power, there was one thing the Sovereign had underestimated: humanity's resilience. Ilara, standing beside Alex, was the first to break the silence. Her eyes were hard, determined. "We've faced impossible odds before. We're still here." Darius, his expression grim but resolute, nodded. "We're not giving up now." Alex looked at his team, his heart swelling with a sense of unshakable purpose. They had been through hell together, each battle taking its toll. Yet, here they stood, ready to make their final stand. Against an enemy beyond comprehension, humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons, but its will to survive. "We don't have much time," Alex said, his voice steady. "We need to destroy the core. Now." The Sovereign's laugh echoed in the dark, a sound that sent a shiver down their spines. You cannot stop what has already begun. With a sudden movement, the Sovereign reached out, tendrils extending like lightning, aiming to strike them down. Alex and his team barely had time to react. Darius fired first, his shots connecting with one of the tendrils, causing it to retract momentarily. But the Sovereign was too powerful. The tendril surged again, faster than they could dodge. The ship trembled as the battle intensified. The Resistance had one chance: get to the core and destroy it before the Sovereign could fully awaken. Elara, ever the engineer, noticed something. The ship's structure wasn't just alien, it was reacting to the Sovereign's presence. The energy flowing through the walls of the ship was unstable, crackling like a storm waiting to break. There was a pattern to it, an oscillating pulse that could be used against the Sovereign. We can use the ship's power against it, Elara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. There's a weak point in the core's energy conduit. If we overload it, we might be able to destabilize the Sovereign's connection. Alex's eyes narrowed. But how? We don't have enough time to figure out the details. I don't need time. Elara snapped, already moving toward the central conduit. Just cover me. Darius and Alex moved into position, their weapons raised, firing at the incoming tendrils. Each shot they fired seemed to do little to slow the Sovereign down. The creature was relentless, a force of nature that refused to be stopped. But Elara wasn't thinking about the Sovereign. She was thinking about the ship, the living, breathing ship that could still be manipulated. She reached the conduit, her hands moving quickly as she accessed the ship's control systems. The interface was alien, far beyond anything humanity had encountered, but Elara's mind worked faster than the technology could keep up. She was no stranger to breaking through complex systems, and this was just another puzzle to solve. With a sudden jolt, the ship shook violently. The Sovereign was fighting back. Alex gritted his teeth, trying to stay focused as the creature's tendrils shot out in every direction, striking the walls and floor with bone-crushing force. Elara! Alex shouted. Hurry! She didn't look up. Her eyes were locked onto the alien controls, her hands moving like lightning. A series of buttons and switches flashed in sequence, and she finally found what she was looking for, the core's overload sequence. She activated it, and the ship immediately groaned in protest. The energy systems began to destabilize, but it wasn't enough yet. Then the twist came. A sudden realization hit her like a punch to the gut: she hadn't been alone in this room. Behind her, the Sovereign had been silently moving closer, its form flickering like a mirage. Before she could react, one of its tendrils shot forward, slamming into her chest with crushing force. Elara screamed as she was thrown back against the wall, blood pouring from her mouth. Alex's heart stopped. Elara! He screamed, rushing toward her. But before he could reach her, the Sovereign's voice resonated through the room, its cold power suffocating. Foolish humans! You think you can stop me? You've only played into my hands. Alex's blood ran cold. What do you mean? He spat, his hands shaking as he reached Elara's side. The Sovereign's form twisted as it advanced on them. Your little resistance. Your struggle for survival. It was all orchestrated. The car were never the true threat. They were my agent's tools I used to bring you here. And now, you will be the ones to awaken me fully. Alex's mind reeled. The car, the resistance, everything they had fought for, it had all been manipulated. They had been nothing more than pawns in the Sovereign's game. But Elara, despite her injuries, was not finished. Her hands, bloodied and weak, still gripped the control system. She looked up at Alex, her voice barely a whisper. I can finish it. Alex shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No. You can't. You're hurt. We'll figure something else out. But Elara smiled through the pain. It's the only way. With one final, defiant motion, Elara initiated the overload sequence, pushing every ounce of her strength into the ship's controls. The ship screamed in agony as its core began to destabilize. The Sovereign howled in fury as its form began to flicker wildly, unable to maintain its grip on the ship's power. But it wasn't enough. The Sovereign was still powerful, still too strong for them to defeat in time. And then, as the ship's core began to collapse, an unexpected twist came. A ripple, a flash of light, and suddenly the room around them distorted. Something else appeared, a figure cloaked in light, its presence calming the violent energies around them. The figure spoke, its voice clear and strong, despite the chaos. "I have been waiting for this moment, Sovereign." Alex's breath caught in his throat as the new figure stepped forward. The Sovereign recoiled, its form flickering like a fading shadow. "No, it cannot be you." The new figure was unmistakable. It was a being unlike anything they had ever seen, radiating an energy that was pure and ancient, a force of balance and creation. It reached out, effortlessly grasping the Sovereign's tendrils with its own ethereal hands. "It is over," the figure said, its voice like the calm before a storm. "You will not destroy this world. Not today." The Sovereign struggled, but the new figure's power was too great. With a final, desperate cry, the Sovereign's form was torn apart, its essence disintegrating in the air like dust in the wind. The ship's core exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves throughout the vessel. Alex shielded his eyes, his heart pounding in his chest. When the light faded, the ship had been reduced to a charred husk, its power source completely destroyed. Elara's limp form lay on the floor beside him. Alex's hands trembled as he checked for a pulse. It was faint, but it was there. She had done it. The battle was over, but the cost had been greater than anything they could have imagined. The war was won, but at what cost? Humanity had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, but the truth of what had transpired would echo through the stars for centuries to come. And as Alex looked at the figure that had appeared, the one who had saved them, he realized that this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The light of the explosion had faded, leaving behind a somber, eerie quiet. The battle was over, and the alien mothership was now little more than a shell, drifting in the blackness of space, its heart destroyed. Alex sat beside Elara's unconscious form, his hand resting on her chest, feeling the faint, steady beat of her heart. Her body was battered, but she was alive. That was all that mattered. The sudden appearance of the mysterious figure, the one who had destroyed the Sovereign with its overwhelming power, left a sense of awe and fear lingering in the air. As the remnants of the battle settled, Alex stood slowly, his eyes still locked on the being that had saved them. The figure had not spoken further, its presence like a calm storm, radiating an energy that seemed to fill the room with peace. There was something profoundly ancient about it, an aura of wisdom and power that transcended the known universe. "You saved us," Alex said, his voice tentative, uncertain. The figure turned its gaze toward him, and though its face remained obscured in a soft, ethereal glow, there was an undeniable calmness in its eyes. "I did not save you, human. You saved yourselves." Its voice was soft yet firm, echoing in the stillness of the room. "You were never meant to be pawns in this game. Your resilience and your choice to fight. That is what made the difference." Alex swallowed hard. He had no words for what he felt. Grateful, yes. But there was also confusion. Who was this being? And why had it intervened now, at the moment when they were on the verge of collapse? The figure stepped closer, as if sensing his thoughts. "I am an agent of balance. I maintain the equilibrium of this universe, ensuring that neither light nor darkness becomes too powerful." It paused, the weight of its words sinking in. "The Sovereign, as you call it, was a threat to that balance. You humans are more important than you realize. You are the stewards of this galaxy now." "We're the stewards?" Alex repeated, still struggling to understand the enormity of what had just transpired. "But we're just humans. Just one species in an entire universe. We're not ready for something like this. The figure's gaze softened, though its intensity never wavered. You are more capable than you know. Your ingenuity, your ability to adapt, and most importantly, your capacity for hope, these are your greatest strengths. You are not the weakest link in this universe. You are the ones who can build a future. Alex nodded slowly, the weight of those words sinking in. For so long, humanity had fought for survival. It had been a battle to protect their homes, their families, their future. But now, it was clear that humanity's place in the universe had shifted. They had been tested in ways they could not have foreseen, and they had proven that their will to live, to fight, could not be broken. What now? Alex asked, finally feeling like he could breathe again. What happens to us? To humanity? The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, it seemed to be contemplating the vastness of the universe, its gaze turning toward the stars visible through the mothership's damaged hull. After a long pause, it spoke again. War is over. The car will retreat into the shadows, and the remnants of the Sovereign will dissolve. Universe has been spared from its reign of darkness. But what happens next is up to you. Humanity now carries the burden of ensuring that this chaos does not rise again. Future you build will determine if this galaxy thrives or falls into darkness once more. Alex's thoughts swirled, the weight of his responsibility crashing down on him. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about leadership. Resistance had fought for a future where humanity could live, but now, that future had expanded. They weren't just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for the entire galaxy. They had a place in this vast, unpredictable universe, and it was time to rise to the challenge. Turning to Elara, Alex gently shook her, urging her to wake up. She groaned and opened her eyes, her gaze blurry at first. Alex? She whispered, her voice strained. Did we win? Alex smiled, his relief evident. We did. It's over. Elara's eyes widened, but she winced in pain as she tried to sit up. What about the Sovereign? It's gone, Alex replied, helping her to her feet. We've won, Elara. The universe. It's safe. Her breath caught as she processed the enormity of his words. And the future? What happens to us now? Alex's expression softened, his voice filled with the certainty of someone who had just glimpsed humanity's potential. Now, we rebuild. We don't just survive anymore. We thrive. And we make sure something like this never happens again. As they looked to the figure, it gave a subtle nod, as though satisfied with their resolve. You are not alone in this journey. There will be other challenges, other forces that will seek to disrupt the balance. But you have proven yourselves capable of facing them. Alex felt a flicker of hope deep in his chest. The future was uncertain, yes, but they had come through the darkest hour. And they had come through as more than survivors, they had come through as warriors, leaders, and creators of their own destiny. Figure's form began to dissolve into the air, its light fading into the ship's damaged structure. I must leave now. My purpose here is fulfilled. It paused for a final moment, its voice softer now. But remember, humans, you are not the only ones who fight for the future. You are one part of a much larger story. The choices you make will echo across the stars. With those final words, the being was gone, leaving only a lingering sense of peace in its wake. Alex and Elara stood in silence, the weight of the universe pressing on them. They had done the impossible. Against all odds, they had defeated the greatest threat humanity had ever known. But that victory had come at a price. The war had changed them, changed everyone. They had seen the darkness that existed beyond their planet, and now they understood that their future would not just be about defending their home but about forging their place in the cosmos. Alex's eyes turned toward the broken hull of the ship, now floating silently in space. He knew that the battle for survival was over, but the real fight building a new future was just beginning. As he glanced at Ilara, he saw the same resolve in her eyes. They had both lost so much, but they had gained something even more valuable, the knowledge that humanity's resilience was its greatest weapon. The universe is big, Ilara said softly, her voice thoughtful, but maybe that's a good thing. We've only just begun. Alex nodded, a sense of purpose filling him. Yes. And now, we'll make sure we're ready for whatever comes next. And as the stars outside their ship shimmered in the endless black, it was clear, the fight was far from over. But humanity had proven, against all odds, that it had the strength to face whatever lay ahead. Future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt full of possibility. Humanity had endured. They had survived. And now, they would thrive. The war had changed the course of history. The victory had not come without sacrifice, but the lessons learned in the depths of space had created a new chapter for humanity. The galaxy was vast, mysterious, and full of both peril and opportunity. And in this new age, humanity was no longer just a footnote in the story of the universe. They were the authors of their own future. As the remnants of the resistance rebuilt, the legacy of their fight spread across the stars. Scars of war remained, but so did the unbreakable spirit of those who had fought for their world and for the future of the galaxy. And somewhere, in the vastness of space, the echoes of the Sovereign's defeat could still be heard. But they were now just whispers, fading with time.